are most EMS outfits' primary funding source.
Welcome to the end. Ews.
Not a good situation for either side. Some nations have Medicare.
It's some date.
And by law, EMS
The 24th of onesies, 12,021.
Reimbursement rate, despite many saying that they are set too low.
He's talking too loud.
With private insurance, the fact is, EMSs are not required to accept that at all.
Not at all.
Many choose to keep themselves out of network. For most insurers,
25th day of onesies, 12,021.
Wherever they want.
Dday.
This situation can often leave patients facing so-called
I'm just about ready to
some of which
hopefully get Windows 10 back on this computer.
Baby Sawyer just couldn't wait to enter
To
the world.
recapture the Pio Vault.
A week before he was due, she and husband Daniel raced to Sutter Roseville. With the emergency room inside, Katie screamed for him to stop the car.
Don't push, I said, don't push.
She went like this,
And I pushed,
and then pop.
and he can't.
Roseville PD called the paramedics, who cut the umbilical cord and drove Katie and Sawyer a matter of a few hundred yards to the hospital door. The entire time of the paramedics, 10 minutes.
It's just another day.
Such a blur.
But later it would come into focus when two equal
Things are coming into
bills
focus.
showed up. One for Katie, one for Baby Sawyer, totaling more than
Action plan.
$2,500.
Not even a full minute worth of an ambulance ride. We had already done the hard part. We delivered our child in the front seat of our car.
Well, hold on then. Did we really do the hard part, Dan? Because from what I just heard, you did some driving and then sat back while your wife, in your words, popped out a human. So I'm not sure you really did the hard part so much as you were just sort of there. Come on, Dan, be an ally. Read a tweet. And there can be absolutely crazy examples of surprise billing, even when EMS is run by the city. In Houston, literally all city-run ambulance services are out of network for all insurers. And a study of one large national insurance plan found that 71% of ambulance rides had the potential to generate a surprise bill. And when you know that, is it any wonder that that woman begged people not to call her an ambulance? Or that this incredibly grim trend...
It's 9:08 in the morning.
Ambulance or Uber?
In that...
That's now the choice.
Why are we mourning things? Are they dead?
Uber and other car services to get to the emergency room.
The sun was resurrected. Let's all mourn.
Chandra Steele did it. What were your symptoms? I had some internal bleeding.
After no on.
I took an Uber to the hospital. Emergency room doctor Ron
Nighty.
Clinical Hospital in New York says Uber ER, as it's been nicknamed, is not a smart idea.
The part of life we love, sleeping.
They don't have any kind of oxygen. They don't have intravenous fluids or IVs. They don't have paramedics. That's the main difference. They have a driver.
Right. They also may not know which local hospital has a trauma, stroke, cardiac or pediatric unit because they're Uber drivers. The most they have are tiny water bottles you're afraid to drink from and a charger for a Samsung phone you do not own. So, to recap, instead of all of us paying a little bit all the time for ambulances, we have a system where some of us pay an awful lot all at once when we have a terrible emergency. And if you're thinking,
Emergency.
how could this possibly get any worse? Well, wait, it can. Because for-profit businesses are also involved here. In fact, currently, private companies represent about 25% of all ambulance providers, and many of them are owned by private equity firms who've been acquiring distressed local ambulance providers for decades now. Remember that baby who got a bill for being born? That came from a private for-profit company, American Medical Response. They are currently the largest ambulance company in the US and are owned by one of the country's largest private equity firms. And when a private equity firm swoops in to help wring profits out of ambulance services by keeping costs low and revenues high, things generally don't change for the better. Take Transcare, an EMS company acquired out of bankruptcy by a private equity firm run by this woman, Lynn Tilton. And a few things to note about her. Aside from serving looks that can only be described as my style icons are Wayne Newton and a Ferrero Rocher candy, Lynn Tilton is a self-described poet, already one of the biggest red flags imaginable. We looked, and one of the only things close to poetry we could find from her was this Instagram post. I am a woman of strength, nothing can break my spirit. I am wild and free, I am a warrior of light, I am me. Which feels less like real poetry, more like someone with a concussion trying to remember Kesha lyrics. Lynn Tilton was also the star of the sadly cancelled reality series Diva of Distress, where she portrayed herself as a saviour of troubled companies in inspirational moments like this.
One of the things we do is we all commit. So I'm going to ask you all to commit with me that we will not stop until we have achieved our goal. I commit. Commit! No pussies in my mill!
She seems great. And Lynn Tilton certainly knows how to instill a sense of courage in those around her. It reminds me of that famous FDR quote, "The only thing we have to fear is pussies in my mill." And Tilton promised to bring that uplifting leadership style to Transcare. But many who worked there described rough conditions on her watch, with one former employee saying they were sent out in a vehicle where the brakes didn't work properly. And during the 2014 Ebola scare, had trouble getting enough sanitary wipes to disinfect their ambulances. Former staff even said they were pressured by Transcare supervisors to go ER shopping, meaning they would steal medical supplies from the ERs to restock their ambulances. And when Transcare inevitably ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2016, its employees found out that they'd lost their jobs like this.
Workers were told they had 30 days left on the job. They showed up today to find this. Transcare was shuttered.
I was in shock. We were all in shock.
It was horrible. It's absolutely horrible. A work emergency for dozens of paramedics.
You know, I have to find another job. I have another side job to support me right now, currently, but that doesn't pay the bills.
Last night we were told, see you tomorrow, have a good night.
Well, that's fucked up. There are certain businesses you assume might disappear overnight, like a kids' lemonade stand or any Circuit City in the late 2000s. Incidentally, they all became kingdoms of optical cables and loose batteries dumped by rats. And that's absolutely fine, but it is not great when what's disappearing is a community's life-saving medical service. And it is not just that Transcare folded. It's that in a bankruptcy court ruling last year, a judge recommended finding Lynn Tilton liable for nearly $42 million for stripping value out of the company, which I guess isn't totally shocking for a woman whose employees were encouraged to strip value out of fucking emergency rooms. Now, I have to say, Tilton denies having done anything wrong and has challenged that recommendation in federal court. And the thing is, I'm not just mad with Lynn Tilton here. I'm mad that we're operating a system where a vital service is left vulnerable to the Lynn Tiltons of the world. So, what can we do about this? Well, as I've said before, ideally we transition to a Medicare for all approach, but that doesn't seem to be in the cards right now. And in the meantime, there are smaller things that we could and should do. For patients, we need to put an end to surprise billing. And the good news is, Congress passed a bill last year called the No Surprises Act, making it illegal to send patients steep medical bills when an out-of-network provider is unexpectedly involved in their care. The bad news is, while that applies to air ambulances, the bill, for some reason, explicitly carved out ground ambulances. In other words, most fucking ambulances. As for EMS providers, we should establish a lead federal agency dedicated to them. And they should absolutely be labelled an essential service, especially because that's what everyone thinks they are. But for that label to mean something, it has to come with funding at the local, state and federal levels. And there is no better time to make these changes than right now, when we still remember the absolute hell of what these workers went through last year. Remember that parade that Bill de Blasio promised? It actually took place last month. You know who notably did not attend? EMTs, many of whom boycotted it because of stagnant wages and the fact that they worked during the pandemic without hazard pay. Look, last year, everyone was anxious to show just how much they supported EMTs. Well, now is the time to fucking prove it and make big changes on their behalf. And if we do that, maybe we'll collectively be worthy of a siren that sounds like this. Get yours, Mickey, you filthy mouse. Moving on, our main story tonight concerns home renovations. They're a big commitment that always turn out great, unless, that is, you're on trading spaces, in which case they can turn out like this.
We are in the room. Open your eyes and see your new fabric.
Wow.
That's disappointing. Well,